Hey there, I'm Nick, and thank you for joining me for the Buckets of Change podcast. For those of you that have subscribed, downloaded, and are listening to the show, thank you very much. These shows post every Thursday weekly, and the video versions of the show post on YouTube, the Buckets of Change YouTube channel, on Fridays. Guys, I'm actually home. I took the day off today because it is nasty outside. I'm still painting outside, which is exciting for me, but I learned that temperatures need to be obviously where they need to be in order for the paint to do what they are supposed to do. And it can be risky if you go out and do something with paint that you're not supposed to do with paint. And what I really wanted to talk about on this episode 5 of the Buckets Change podcast is risk. I want to talk all about risk. I don't usually recycle my content where I put something on the socials and then talk about it on the podcast. I kind of like mixing it up and being original, but I really wanted to elaborate on a recent post I did about risk. Last week, I took on a pretty big project and painted a popcorn ceiling. Never painted a popcorn ceiling before. And it was something that was extremely challenging because not only was it not a small room, it was a 2-story, 16-foot ceiling, but I had to do it all with these long poles, and I had to take my time and do research and figure out what rollers to use. So I had to make a very, very calculated risk. But at the end of the day, I needed to make sure that I did everything to the best of my ability the right way possible, so epic failure didn't happen, where the popcorn ceiling gets wet and falls apart and crumbles to the ground, and then I have to buy these people a new popcorn ceiling or have their ceiling refinished or what have you. And I can't believe it flowed so awesome. The homeowner was great. They gave me an amazing review on Google. Mike and Patty, you guys are awesome. I had so much fun spending time at your house last week, and it's great that we're neighbors, and it was awesome. But it really got me thinking about risk and understanding what risk is and why people are so hesitant to take risks, because risk equals change, and change means moving away from the status quo, which scares the hell out of people. Because I think, and I know it exposes people to the unknown, and we all want to be safe. We all want to be comfortable. We all want to find a place. I like painting for people because usually my slogan is be able to provide the best quality and peace of mind. I really want to make sure that my homeowners that I paint for and the clients I work with and anybody I work with, I provide them peace of mind, especially when they're stressed and dealing with a lot of inner and outer conflict. So what I wanted to share with you today is what risk looks like from someone who takes risks. And I'm going to use some of examples of my own story. And when someone takes risks, what it looks like from the people that are watching that person take risks. If you are someone right now that are, let's say, in a career or a job position where you feel it's risky to make a move, where something's going to have to give. You may have to change your lifestyle, but you know something has to change for you to be happier and healthier, because from my experience, I know what it feels like to be in a job that doesn't no longer fulfill your purpose. I've had careers where at points it had filled my purpose, but as life changes and you change, your purpose changes, and or you get more in tune about what your purpose is. So you want to be in line with that, especially if you're spending a majority of your time during the week to do something that provides for your family. Hopefully, you're doing something that makes you happy and brings you joy, and it's fun, and it pays you when you grow, and all those things. So I wanted to dial it back to 2018. That was the year that I made the decision that I no longer wanted to be in the career that I had chosen in 2000. I had been, if you're familiar with the show, I was an HR leader, professional, and then led to HR executive positions, VP positions that compensated me very, very well, but provided a lot of opportunity that required a lot of responsibility and a lot of ownership and a lot of time. And I'm kind of an all-in type of guy, if you've seen some of my work and follow my content, and it's very hard for me not to put 100% in everything I do. So something usually has to give. And when I no longer cared about what I did anymore, and I became apathetic, and I went through this midlife crisis following this Alaskan cruise in 2018, it put me in a really, really dark place. And I had to make a clear decision to do something different. And the hardest part about making that decision was the risk involved. So you pick a path. You're on a path, your career. You've worked very, very hard. It could be something you either fell into like I did, or something you went to college with. You went 4 to 7 years or whatever the profession is. And whatever the reason was, you decided to pursue this career. And whether or not you started in a position that you wanted or you started at a lower level and worked your way up, all that effort becomes something that means something to you. And God forbid you would let anyone take that away from you. I'm very, very proud of the experience I had as an HR professional. I believe it helps me a lot today. It helps me in my coaching and speaking arena in Buckets of Change. So it is exciting, and I'm grateful to have all those good experiences and to be able to pay that forward. Hands down, I'm very, very excited. And no one can take that away from me. However, when you make a choice to be in a career like that, as you get to take as much as you, hopefully, as much as you give to that. And hopefully those positions provide you a lot of pride and honor and self-fulfillment. But as jobs get bigger, they require more sacrifice. And with more sacrifice requires a lot more time and energy and time that you should and would be more beneficial in spending with people that you care about and love and cherish, friends, family, partners, confidants, whoever they are. And as many times as I've worked at organizations and jobs, they talk about family. And I was that person sitting side by side with those business owners making the decisions, especially this time of the year, which is really ironic, of what next year is going to look like. They start looking at their profit and losses, their balance sheets, and realizing that headcount is a cost. So for those of you working a 9-to-5 job, salary job, some way, shape, or form, your pay is listed on a list of headcount and what that costs the organization, not only your pay, but also benefits they provide you, time off they accrue, all these things that make up what it costs to have an employee. And at the end of the year, that's when I've always been in conversations at companies I've worked with where it's time to figure out who can we afford to live without in order to continue to move forward, accomplish our objectives, or did we get too fat over the year, maybe hire too many people and thinking that we did, and we got to cut it. And that was very hard for me. I had to definitely go in a different place in my head to look at individuals objectively, and it was difficult. It was I struggled a lot with even making friends at work which was risky, because I was always afraid that if I made friends at work, I may be in a position where I have to terminate one of my friends or write up one of my friends. And I never wanted to be in a position where I was considered being biased in any type of situation. So all that being said, it built and built and built. And then I realized I needed to make a change. And could I make a change? And when I was on that cruise ship in Alaska, reading some books and kind of soul searching, being absolutely disconnected from the world, I realized and I made a conscious decision to ask myself, what if I stopped doing this? What if I decided that I no longer wanted to be in my profession anymore? I'd worked so hard to get where I was and felt that I earned it, but I wanted to ensure that I was at that time in my life, I was doing something that made me, could I be happier? And could I do something that made me happy? And for the past several years, I had been podcasting. I had a previous podcast and been in the podcast space for so long. And I found out that anytime I was in that environment, it felt like work. It was fulfilling to do, producing a show, going to conferences, speaking at conferences. But I felt appreciated when I spoke to the environment of podcasting and then the groups I spoke to and also my audience that I didn't feel when I was in a corporate environment. And it made me feel really good. And I thought, what if I did this? What if I produced podcasts? And what if I stayed in that podcast space? Could I actually do it? But I made the conscious decision to then realize that the risk would be that I may never make the money that I'm making now. And you may be someone who is in a position where you are at the pinnacle of your monetary career, where you're making as much money as you possibly can, more than you can do with. And yet it would be terrifying if you no longer had that money. And one of the things that started changing my mindset, which is also a risk too, changing your mindset and thinking differently, is I saw so many people lose their jobs over my career, especially people that I sat across the desk to and told them they no longer had a job. And they made a lot of money, but yet they found other jobs and survived. So I'm starting to watch all these people doing these things that, or leaving these organizations, making so much money, and yet finding opportunity and hopefully, I never talked to them, but hopefully being much happier in what they do, or finding happiness. I think every step in your life should be or it would be beneficial if it was a step towards something that provided you a lot more fulfillment and joy. And I like helping people. I really enjoy helping people do that. And as much as my journey too, sharing it, with you. So suddenly I make the decision on this boat, which was extremely risky. And I said, I no longer want to do this anymore. So I basically quit. In my own head, I decided I no longer want to do this anymore. Not only do I not want to do it at the company I was working at, but I don't think I want to do it in general. And I suddenly made that choice. And then the fear set in. So when we decide to take a risk, and that I'm talking like when I share my experience, it's something that is a big part of my platform and my story. However, you may take a risk where you decide to get a bigger car, get a bigger house, move out to the country, move to the city, take a chance on someone in a relationship, get married. It can be any type of thing that is different than where you are now. And that's what, in essence, what change is. Change is, in essence, pivoting from where you are now. Some are significant and some aren't. But I think in thinking out loud that significance, I think, has a direct correlation with how risky it is and how dangerous it may be, or harm it might create by making that decision to change. So I make this decision to change. I don't tell anyone. The risk to my health was that I fell into a bout of depression that I didn't know how to deal with, absolutely didn't know how to deal with. But again, I took the risk to ask for help. I could have just sucked it up and said, you know what, this is what I'm doing and I'm going to figure it out. There was some points where I thought, I'm a professional. I help people with problems. Why can't I help myself? When I suddenly started reaching out to ex-CEOs, I started reaching out to authors I knew, podcasters, close confidants, and friends, and said, I don't know how to deal with what I'm dealing with. Recruiters, people I've known in my HR world, and all of them, even if the conversation was 2 minutes or 2 hours, provided me some support and guidance on changing my mindset and the way I was attacking things, which then required more change and required more risk. And I just constantly felt with that risk, I was uncomfortable. Every time I made a decision to change the path I was on led to more discomfort. When you decide to take a risk, and it could be, this is really minimal, but let's say you were at an amusement park and you decided to ride a ride that you never would think of riding, and you got in line. It's the time you make the decision until the time you survive the ride. That is an epic part of your personal development. It is an opportunity to process the decision of saying, I'm going to do something that makes me very, very uncomfortable or put me in danger. Obviously, a ride, it should be safe. Make sure you're going to amusement parks where it's safe. That I'm curious to see how I'm going to feel when I'm done. And you know this, I know this, even when we see our kids do something that to them was very risky or uncomfortable, they always seem so enlightened when they're done and happier when they're done and confident when they're done. And the more times you take risks, calculated risks, mind you, that give you a hint of discomfort where change is inevitable, you get doses of self-fulfilling confidence, feelings of reassurance. Your self-esteem goes up. All the chemicals, dopamine, everything in your brain starts firing at all cylinders, and it provides you, in essence, more peace. And what I do with my clients and what I speak about is providing tools and a framework that can be used constantly with change in these buckets I teach my clients to empty that help them go through each step, that anytime they decide to take a risk, that in essence, it will allow them to go through it faster and get a lot more information or not information, but fulfillment and the desired outcome quicker and easier. And because I'm a big fan about helping people do things easier. So deciding to do that and taking that risk of just not doing what I did before was one risk. Then, as months went by, then the risk really was, well, if I'm going to do something, and it makes me happier. Let's say I did podcast production or consulting, which I did to survive during that kind of transitional period where I didn't quite know where I was going to land, that I kept asking myself, can I pay my mortgage? Can I pay my bills? Can I provide for my family? Can I provide reassurance to my family too, that I can figure this out and I can still do the things that I'm obligated to do as a father, as a husband, in a totally new path? Because before I could do it. Even though internally I was so unhappy, externally to everyone around me, I was secure and I was successful and I was making money. I was in a high-paying position. I flew on jets. I sat in boardrooms. The outside world looking in, they all thought that things were going great. And usually when you're in a position where things are going great, when you decide to stop doing it, you hear things like, well, why would you? So actually, a family member said, why would you stop doing something you're so good at? Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it forever. But people think, I think we have a societal norm that when people are really, really good at something, why would they risk throwing that away? When Jordan left the NBA and he played baseball, Michael Jordan, in the 90s, that freaked everybody out. But yet he just tried something new. From what I'm aware from the documentary that was on Netflix, the people that he played for said he was amazing. He worked so hard. He did the best he absolutely could. He wasn't, winning World Series or anything, but he tried something new and did it. And I respect him for that. I think that's so awesome. And it doesn't take away from the success that you've already done. If you decide to make a change in your career or a job, it doesn't take away all the successes you have. It doesn't do that. It just allows you to go on a different road that will require the same effort, emphasis, education, knowledge, skills, abilities, all those things that you had to get in your head and learn to be successful in the job that you're looking to leave or change, or career you're looking to change. So I'm taking all these risks, and I don't know what it was, but I was so used to being uncomfortable in my old job that if anything was as uncomfortable, I already had coping mechanisms to deal with it. I knew it wasn't forever, and the one thing I did know is when you're in a toxic environment that you don't have control over, you'd rather be in an environment that you can guide your own discomfort and make your own decisions versus having all those decisions be made for you. And I used to see that. I used to watch what that did to employees. I used to help companies how to communicate change, to alleviate the discomfort to the best of our ability. You couldn't do it completely, but change just makes people uncomfortable. So in doing all this, I'm going through this process, and now I have the outside world looking at me. And I talked a bit about it before. My wife, Megan, who is unbelievable, took me out for my birthday last night, which was awesome. She took me to buy shoes. I've been wearing, I don't know what it is, but I don't buy clothes. I don't buy clothes. Prior to my midlife crisis, I went through this thing where I was ordering clothes through Stitch Fix, which I don't promote them. They don't sponsor the show, but Stitch Fix, it's one of these numerous mail order clothes companies where you get clothing items, you decide what you want to keep, and you pay for it. I think even the shirt that I'm wearing right now on this YouTube video is actually from Stitch Fix. But that's the last time I really bought clothes. I don't know why. Again, that's just growing up. I didn't really go out and buy new clothes. I think I'm gonna have my son. He's pretty stylish. He's gonna take me out. So last night, my son and Nathan and my wife Megan took me out to the outlets, and I bought a brand new pair of work sneakers. So I've been breaking them in all day as I've been home, which is awesome. But at the time, Megan was not quite as supportive as I thought she would be. And it's not that she's not supportive. it was the fact that I did something that, because of her connection with me and how I supported the family, felt was completely off the radar. Never would have expected it. I had planted seeds over the 2018, but never really had an honest conversation with her. And I think that was an enormous risk, not sharing that with her, as I'm now pursuing a coaching and speaking avenue of my business. I'm much more vocal and learned from my mistakes, much more vocal about the transition. And I've got her 100% of her support, and she helps me make certain decisions with what I'm doing. But back then I made a mistake, and basically you will make mistakes as you take risks. Some of those risks you take will be absolute mistakes. And not go as planned. And when you do take those risks, all of us need to understand we have to take responsibility for the results all the time, no matter what change we take. If we jump in there knowing we accept responsibility, there's no blame, there's no self-judgment, there's no judgment of others. It's an easier way, and I talk to my clients about this, an easier way to go through that natural change process when suddenly you hit a roadblock or an obstacle or something that did not go as planned. Again, if I was painting that ceiling last week, that popcorn ceiling, and the ceiling caved in my head, I was prepared for it, but I knew I'd have to take responsibility for it. I knew that from the get-go. And I still took that risk, knowing full well that if I did the right research and I took my time and leaned on all the knowledge that I've built over the last few years, and even through my whole career of understanding how to deal with obstacles, I would nail it. And I totally did, which rocked. I'm very proud. I might talk about that more than once on this podcast. So my wife, Megan, is there and starts seeing me doing this and is asking me a lot of questions. And I think when you take a risk in changing careers, the people around you will ask a lot of questions. One, they'll ask if you're crazy. They'll wonder what's wrong with you. Like, why would you do this? And family will sometimes even internalize it and say, why are you doing this to us? And in no way, I think, unless you're intentionally doing that, if you're looking to seek out a job position or a career that requires some change that will impact financially or your lifestyle or your time, I don't ever think that whatever pain you create to those around you and that discomfort from that risk that is then interpreted by the people around you, it's okay. It's really okay. They will forgive you. They will forgive you. If your intent is good and you work your butt off and follow a path and be smart about it, I think, and I know they will forgive you. Megan and I plan to get her on the show to really talk about her side of that story. And it's going to be difficult. She shared it with me, but I really want to share that with my audience, with you, to hear that from her. But I made a lot of, I took calculated risks, but I also made some foolish risks. And it then took a lot more work to fix that. So my family is out there seeing me do this, and friends that even came forward afterwards that are wondering, why would you throw something away that you've built and fell into nearly 20 years ago? And I've learned to provide, it took me some time, but with some help from a close friend, when individuals judge you for the decisions you make in your career or the lifestyle changes you make based on your career, or you pursuing something that is a little bit more exciting, may not be fluffier or perceived as something that pays you a lot of money, you have to provide those individuals with a little bit more compassion and understand that, one, don't take what they're saying personally, because if you do, then that really slows down whatever momentum you're building in your process of change. But most likely they're projecting their own insecurities on you. That's why when people succeed, right? I mean, Jordan, when he did it, people were knocking him down because he left a successful, he won 3 championships, for Christ's sake, and then he leaves and goes to play baseball. People knock you down. I don't think I've ever really experienced that, where people say, when you're doing something people, maybe I'm not as big as I think that people would knock me down, but I do my best to provide as much compassion as possible, to try to understand more where they're coming from as they respond to the risk that I've taken, so I can possibly learn a little bit more about myself, but also continue to love them and care for them, because I don't want to judge them for them projecting something on me that they don't have control over. I've worked very, very hard over the last 5 years to understand self-awareness and managing my ego, and it's an active process, and not a lot of people do, and it's not, I guess, appropriate for me to expect others to do that. And with any transition you go through, whatever flack you get from those individuals, and sometimes these are those people closest to you that insert negativity in your head, and my friend and I, we call them tricksters, those things that convince you that you can't do something or it will never work. I could tell you, when I was taking on that ceiling, I never heard that. Other than thinking about it, the entire process, I never was waiting for the shoe to drop. I didn't allow those tricksters to talk to me, and that's taken a lot of work. I like working with clients to help them with that and really help them past that, because when you're aware and you hear those voices in your head trying to negate you, which ironically are necessary, those voices, you can hear them, but you don't have to listen to them. They're there to guide you. They've been in our heads. That part of our ego has been in our heads for so long to keep us surviving, to keep us away from taking risks that put us in absolute danger. But I don't think changing a career is dangerous unless you're doing it intentionally to hurt yourself or hurt others. I'm going to leave this company to make them pay. That's not the right way to do that. And I challenge people to change their mindset where I'm changing careers or changing a job or going to seek another career path or a different type of entrepreneurial avenue for me, to see what I can do, to see where I can flourish more, versus to get back at an organization that may be toxic for me, or an environment that doesn't fulfill my purpose, or a job that just I'm not interested in anymore, which is okay. It's absolutely okay. It is okay for you to feel discomfort, and giving yourself permission to feel discomfort for looking at different jobs that may also not be even in the career that you're in. In June of 2019, when I found my first professional painting job, I wasn't even a painting company. I just took on some painting work. But in my experience building brands and understanding with business, I thought to myself, you know what, I can absolutely do this. I'm going to see if it works out. And I just created I Heart Painting. And then the risk I took was not talking to my wife about it. And I launched that on Facebook. And that was a mistake. And again, I had to accept the results of that mistake and figure out how to make amends with how I made my wife feel by not bringing her in the fold. And even though last week everything went right with that ceiling, there will be times when you will decide to take a risk in your life, and that risk equals change, and that change will lead to results that you either expect or don't expect. And the perception of others will be a lot of judgment, will be a lot of "you're crazy," will be a lot of confusion. And like I said, all that is they're projecting their own insecurities on you. And most of the time, it's simply to protect you and out of love. And if you can interpret it that way, you can find your way to make more calculated decisions in your change process, which will give you more determined results, things you want to happen, and less of those things that don't happen the way you want them to. But know that when they don't happen the way you want them to, you own and are responsible for those results. Guys, we're responsible for everything we do. We can't blame other people for wherever we are in life. And that's the most amazing thing. You can do anything you want to do. All you have to do is decide you're going to do it and have the right tools or experience to get there. And that's what's so exciting. I actually have a client. I think I'm going to speak to him later on. It's a painting colleague of mine. He reached out to me. We've talked about careers. He's in a transition phase where he was at an organization for a long period of time. And then he left for a bigger opportunity, more benefits, flexible scheduling, all these things that on paper looked great. But unfortunately, after being at his new organization, thank God, he realized in a very short period of time that he doesn't think he's a match for the organization, but he's made all these decisions, right? Taken all these risks to change things and doesn't know if he can go back. He needs to understand and have the tools to move forward. And he's trusting me to provide him some of that framework to do that. And I'm excited for that. But he did take a risk. And my biggest thing I was letting him know is, one, congratulations on taking that risk and now taking another risk and making a clear decision. Thank God, if you're in a job and this is for any of you starting a new job, it is okay to decide during that first, we used to say 90-day period, probationary period, those 3 months to decide whether or not you're a match for the company or that company's a match for you guys. Life is too short to stay at a place where you're going to make it work, where you know deep down in your head it's not the right thing. Those are the real things, the real parts of your inner monologue that is telling you the right thing to do. But then it snowballs into, well, what if this happened? What if this happens? Well, I love helping people with what if. And I hope me telling you the story about risk and understanding all the risks that I took and those perceived risks calculated and those risks that led to results I didn't expect at all. And then how that risk affects those people around you and how to cope with that and how to deal with that with compassion and understanding and not judging those folks because they're simply doing that because they care about you. It's a weird way of caring because I look back, I joke with a lot of entrepreneurial friends of mine that when they started their businesses, we always wish that everyone around us would pat us on the back and say, good job constantly. But that's the lonely part of taking risks and change because everyone wants to be part of something normal and the usual. And when we deviate from that, we step out of that path, out of that tribe, quote unquote tribe. And the tribe will look at you and say, what's wrong with you? But as complex as we are and our brains are, I think it's such an opportunity if you're at a point in your life right now where you may need a change. So guys, thank you for listening to episode 5 of the Buckets of Change podcast. And for those of you listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, thank you for watching me. If you haven't subscribed to either the podcast or the YouTube videos, feel free to subscribe. So that way, each and every week when these shows post, the audio and the video version, they'll notify you to listen. I can be followed on my numerous social media platforms. I'm now on TikTok, which is so exciting. It's such a risky thing to do. Like, I not that risky, but again, I might say the risk of thinking no one will pay attention to me. You know, what's the worst case scenario? But that's so exciting to do. I dove right into it. Megan really convinced me to do that. And now I'm sharing those videos on all my social media platforms. You can follow me on Facebook. Our Facebook community, the Buckets of Change, is in the process of being developed. Very excited for that. And if you're someone who you are in a position or a career where you're somewhere in your head, you're thinking, what if I did something different? Could that work? And can I make that work? The first step is just asking yourself a series of questions that may validate that feeling. And I have a link in the show notes called the Buckets of Change Assessment. Take that. It takes lessons. It's a free assessment. It's a great tool I put out there where you can see and understand if maybe now's the time or the time may happen very soon where you or the proverbial we need to make a change to find a path that provides us more happiness, joy, and fulfillment so we can be more present with the people around us, because that is very, very important. Anytime I have a stressful week or I feel that I'm losing myself in my work or the stresses of anything, I ask my wife, Megan, am I present? Because that keeps me in check. For a long career in HR, I was never present at all with my family, and it's great to be able to do that now and be even more present because I own my schedule, which is really great too. Guys, thanks for taking the time to check the Buckets of Change out. I'm Nick, your host, and I will talk to you very, very soon.